Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zoom into Wine. It's time for the show and your host, Ian Blackburn. Chris was running the floor at a great restaurant in Long Beach called La Opera, and it was a golden moment for the wine business. There weren't a lot of us people working in the wine business back in the 1990s. The wine industry was small. Like, gosh, just to put it in perspective, I had 3 Pinot Noirs to sell. And Chris was
one of them.
Exactly. And we've all done so many different things. Now Chris is working for Broadbent, and Chris did such a remarkable job. He worked for Michael Mina in his career, and he had some amazing experience. And Michael Broadbent was smart and brought him on board, and their portfolio.
Bartholomew.
That's correct. Bartholomew Broadbent. That's what did I say? Michael?
You said, well, his father is Michael Broadbent. So
that's right.
Obviously, a lot of times people make that mistake, but
yeah, I didn't mean to do that.
That's quite all right. It's quite all right.
But
Michael Broadbent's very, very famous as well, so that's why it's a common occurrence. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Michael passed away a couple years ago too,
yes,
so that was
exactly,
that was unintended. But it has been a day that I can't wait to put this first taste of Gusbourne in my mouth. So I want to toast you all for joining us and thank you.
Except for who's missing out on the Gusbourne tonight? Is that?
Those are my friends Susan and Tom.
Sue. Well, here's to how delicious it is on Thursday night as well. Okay, so I know that Ian's telling you got to drink on Wednesday only, but this is you can do this any night of the week, and I think Thursdays are always.
For tonight, the gin will have to do.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm recalling now that Sue, we sent something to you, but it wasn't right or something, and we had to fix it, and I fixed it. I got it in motion, but I might have set it up to be delivered tomorrow, and that's pretty par for.
Yeah, so you sent us the wines for next week, along with a bottle of glassware. I have one of the wines for tonight because we were really interested in English.
Actually,
ever since they legalized marijuana here in California, Ian has been a little bit,
I wish I could blame that, dude. I wish I could, man.
I'm teasing.
It's just too much time behind the computer.
No, I understand. I sympathize with him because it's. But I am
looking for a prescription. You need one of those? I need to get some of that sleeping stuff. Some of my friends are talking about how well they're sleeping with their little magical friend now. So I'm gonna invest. But I did send some of these guys out to a lot of folks that picked up the entire bubble package. This is the Riedel Restaurant champagne glass. It's like a little Pilsner glass. Have you seen this, Chris?
No, I did not get it. I'm using my classic wine glass, which I use for all my bubbles because it puts more bubbles in them.
Well,
I actually prefer to use a regular wine glass for champagne and sparkling wine, just because I tend to like stick my nose and swirl and sniff. It's not just about the effervescence of the bubble, but it's also about kind of the broader range of the aromatics.
I get it. But these came a dozen at a time, and I got to give them all to our client who joined us for the entire series.
Oh, see, I blew it.
That's all right. So we got to have Mr. Tattinger on with us in a couple of weeks. That's Clovis, who I've never had a conversation with, but I worked with the Tattinger family for a long time, and that's going to be awesome to get to know him a little bit, and really have great love for the Tattinger family. So they're part of our Bubble series. And we're also going next week to Cava and Prosecco, and we've got some really top-notch representatives, Segura Vietas, as well as Bisol Prosecco. So really kind of a cool little package here. I thought it would be thematically a good time. With the election coming up in a week, are you kidding me? This is such a crazy time to be alive. We're all under the vice grips of life. We need some bubbles, Chris, and thank you for coming to our rescue tonight. And we're gonna all get to enjoy this really cool trip with Gusbourne. And Chris has been out there representing this wine and turning people onto it. And it's a really cool brand. 15 years ago, you would never have spoken about English sparkling wine, but through warming of the planet, through the advancement of science, through the advancement of viticulture and viniculture, we're making wine in places that we never thought we would make wine before. There's a vineyard at 7,000 feet in elevation in China. There's making great wine. There's vineyards in almost every state in America and every country on earth. And now it's about making the wine better and better and better. And I think it helps when the audience knows more about it to be able to share. And so that's what these Zoom sessions do, give us a lot of conversational knowledge about these products. I get to talk to some of the producers or the team that works at the house and bring that into the conversation. And then experts like Chris give us the finite details. So Chris, why don't you geek out on Gusbourne for me for a minute and tell me, if you were walking into a restaurant to sell the buyer on this wine, what would you point out about this brand?
Well, probably because what or who Gusbourne is, and it's basically the luxury leader in English sparkling wine, which is a burgeoning or a new category in sparkling wine production. As you can imagine, global warming has kind of made southern part of that island a little bit warmer and drier. And Kent, which is where the winery is located just south and southeast of London, close to the coast. And of course, soil structures and the ability for the northern climates to make sparkling wine from Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, just like they do in Champagne. And so Gusbourne was created they're the luxury leader in amazing sparkling wine.
Well, this place that we're going to be going to here, and Chris, I've got a couple of different slideshows. I thought I would just pop open this cool little map to show everybody. And if there's another slide in here that you really want me to show off, I could do that. But this map just really kind of gives us some pretty cool detail. And really what we discovered in Europe is that this chalky plateau extends all the way from Champagne across France and kind of comes right into this part of England. And there's some different things that we can look at here. We got some different technology that we can put to work tonight to show you some different things that happened. But this chalky plateau, and then they started playing with the different vineyard, different soils in different parts of England and planted different things. I learned today that there were a lot of Germanic varieties that they were playing with. They weren't doing so great. And then they got aggressive and started planting some Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in England about 20 years ago. And here we are, really looking at something pretty dynamic and pretty exciting for the wine world. And I think England is every champagne producer's largest customer. So it's kind of optimal that England started making some great sparkling wine. And they've got a built-in huge audience. Of course, 100 years ago, they were everybody's biggest customer because they didn't make anything. And so the English were just big consumers. And now they have something of their own that they can be very proud of. There's also a lot of joke about the English being the brutes of England, and therefore they made the champagne dry just for the English market. Because of their dry humor, and so that the primary customers of champagne 100 years ago were the Russians and the Germans, and they liked it sweet, but the English liked it dry, like their jokes. So that's a little bit of an intro toast to you guys about Gusbourne. We're going to go into our little slideshow, And Chris, I'm actually having some problems bringing up the interview that we had earlier today. I'm hoping I can fix it, but
I'll tell you a little bit about the estate. So, I mean, have you all been to? If you've been to London, you might not have gone out to Kent, but it's not too far away, about an hour and a half drive. Or if you take the high-speed train, it's about just under an hour. And it basically the original Gusbourne estate in Appledore, which is a little village in Kent, dates back to 1410, and was named after John Gusbourne. It was actually goose, as in the goose, as you'll see on the label. There's a little goose on the label, whose crest included 3 geese, right, from which the logo was inspired. So Gusbourne, so there's a little play off of that. In 2003, a gentleman by the name of Andrew Weber took over the estate, and then he decided, he looked at this amazing kind of what he looked at as terroir, so to speak, and planted 20 hectares. Because he basically, from the estate, you can see, and I've been there a couple of times, from the estate, you can see the Romney Marsh. So you can see the coastline, and you can see all these wonderful wind turbines right along the coast. And in front of there used to be a little marsh, and actually the Dutch, in their genius, in terms of their ability to move water, it's what they did in Bordeaux, obviously, and then in the Romney Marsh. They drained the marsh, and so there's an extension from that plateau that goes straight out to the coastline. And then there you see those wind turbines, and that's where the winery is located, just slightly, I forget what the total kilometers or miles from the coastline, but it's not very far away at all. So you see, so he planted it to Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, because with the intent of making sparkling wine. The intent was ultimately to make sparkling wine in the same model that they make in Champagne, to create an English sparkling wine that would stand up alongside the best of the best from all over the world. Because of course, while we kind of put Champagne on the pedestal of the greatest sparkling wine on the planet, at the end of the day, there's a lot of fantastic producers that make sparkling wine all over the world, just not in that kind of concentration. But obviously English sparkling wine is a burgeoning category. I'm very, very excited. About 7 years ago, they also bought some vineyards in Sussex. And you've probably heard of the vineyards there tend to be more chalk driven. So they're whites, the white chalk. So more classically structured in terms of high acid, brighter, really interesting wines coming out of Sussex. Right now, what you're tasting is a Blanc de Blanc, so 100% Chardonnay. Mm-hmm. This wine is vintage dated, so 2014 vintage. It right. Spends a minimum of 3 years on its lees before it's disgorged and then corked, which means it spends a lot of time. And I'll let Ian talk about the geek side of autolysis.
Well, let me show these couple of slides, Chris, and then we'll probably have some cool stuff.
Giving him some filler. I was giving him some filler here. So
I was trying really hard to get the video to work, and I'm really having a hard time with it. I'm not sure it's going to work out, but I will send it to everybody.
Here's the thing: he threw me for a loop because he originally he was going to let it go with somebody. No, with someone who actually is much more savvy than I am about Gusbourne.
Mm-hmm. We have an interview that we did earlier today, actually 7:30 this morning, with Master Sommelier, who represents the brand out of she's just nearby Kent, and so she and
she's in England. She's in London.
Yes, and we had a wonderful moment this morning, and I'll definitely share that with you if I can't get it to work during the Zoom. But for those of you that are not able to taste with us, and I know a couple of you, but here is the bottle that we are tasting, Gusbourne Blanc de Blanc. Gusbourne is able to make a number of different types of sparkling wine, but Blanc de Blanc, meaning white of whites, 100% Chardonnay. It is vintage dated 2014, and I believe she said this wine actually spent 42 months on the lees before disgorge.
Actually, if you look at the foil,
yeah,
it'll tell you the disgorgement date.
Oh,
or the back of the label.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Every bottle has its disgorgement date because, in full disclosure, for those of us in the geek world of sparkling wine, disgorgement dates are some of the most important things that it's on the side of the label. You'll see it's very small printed, and it'll tell you when it was disgorged.
See, these things we learn.
Yeah, and so that's really, really cool. So
I still can't find it, but
you'll find it.
Oh wait,
eventually.
I found it. It's embossed in the side.
Yes, exactly. So what's really fun about this is so they only make vintage sparkling only because they're talking a little bit about more of a reflection of what the vintage has given them. So every single wine made from Gusbourne is 100% vintage. Stylistically, they lean towards a more autolytic style, which I really, really enjoy. So you get that kind of the richer, toasty characteristics in the wine. Now, keep in mind that they're a little bit different in the sense that here everybody thinks about limestone soils and such, but technically there's more clay and sand here. And so I think Chardonnay thrives here. Which is why they a big percentage of the planting is Chardonnay. And this one, of course, is their 100% Chardonnay. But what I love is its intense minerality and ripping acidity.
So what she explained is that because it's clay, it actually has a heat retention benefit, which is a good thing for England. So
yeah, because
the
it's
plant retains more heat and it helps with ripening and providing a little bit more palate weight and roundness from this place. And then they bought some other vineyards, as you were talking about, in Sussex, which are a little bit more pure chalk.
Yeah, although in this wine, you won't see any of those base wines from Sussex in the wine you have right now. Those
wines are still new, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't believe so. I mean, I could ask Charlie for specifics, but it's not a component here.
I found the disgorge date, Chris, and it's in 2019. I couldn't make out the month, but it looks like 2019 on mine. So almost 5 years. Is that possible?
It is.
Yeah. So.
And that's kind of fun, isn't it?
Ian, can I break in?
Yeah, go for it.
Mine is March 15th, 2019, the Ides of March.
Wow, look at that. Special.
Yeah. And they might have done that on purpose because they do kind of get a little geeked out and crazy like that. I love it. Cool. I mean, Charlie is a great winemaker.
Cool. Well, see if you have any comments or questions you want to either speak up like Ryan did. We love that. Or you guys can always pump in a comment like Jenny did. Hers says 3 of 2019. I believe you both have probably the same disgorge, probably the same case came out of there at the same time. So very cool. So when we make sparkling wine, we spend a good amount of time working on the blends, and those come around right after the fermentation finishes. And with harvest for sparkling wine being probably a little earlier than your big red wine harvest, you're probably starting to go to work on your blends as early as November and December of that year, testing some things out and seeing what the wines actually start to taste like. You have to put those blends together pretty quickly, and it's really one of the major talents of a sparkling wine producer is to be able to work with these really intense, youthful, high acid flavors and know what they're going to end up tasting like 5 years out in the future and more. And so they blend the wine, they put it in the bottle, and then they do that secondary fermentation in the bottle. And it spends, almost 5 years on those, the solids that bottle fermentation creates, the dead yeast. The dead yeast starts to break itself down, and they call that autolysis or autolytic character. And that starts to smell a little bit doughy. if there's a heavy dose of yeast in the bottle. So this property uses only wine from their own vineyards. They have 60 hectares, so a pretty sizable estate. Oh, back on that last slide was the soil map, and let's hope that works. Let's see. Yeah, I accept. Can you see that pretty well?
Well, you actually had it on a prior slide.
Did I?
If you want, I mean, obviously, that's getting super geeky there. What really this slide shows you is the diversity of soils in England. So I think that the argument here is a lot of times, even wine professionals such as myself, before I started working with English sparkling wine, my assumptions were that everything was just like it was I only heard that it was all about the extension of the Kimmeridgian soils that came up from Europe and into the southern part of England, and that was what the soil structures was. And I think what this map shows you is there's much more diversity in soils here than one would normally think. And so there's some diversity here as far as terroir. It's still quite a young wine growing region in terms of understanding what it can give, but ultimately this diversity is providing us a broader example of how many layers of complexity that exist within just growing viticulture in England.
So super cool geeky little website to show the breakdown of the soils. I'll include a link to this in our gift bag so you can all play with it and check it out. But this is, kind of something that a lot of regions are playing with, is trying to get you to know the appellation well. Do you know where, Chris, where do I go from here to get there? Am I down
to get to Appledore?
Yeah.
It might have been on a prior map, so I apologize for not. Plus, I'm blind these days. One of these days I'll go and get some new.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it by zooming in a little bit more.
If you, I actually think I sent you a map, and it'll show you Wales as well.
Yeah.
The whole island.
Yeah, I got Wales over here on this map too, but the way they've been able to kind of isolate the different soil types and stuff, and that's really very modern way of looking at where you're going to plant what type of grape, and you're looking for certain things, checking certain types of boxes, and the fact that they've got that isolated in even a place like England, which is still a fairly new wine.
Well, it's an old wine growing region, but it's a new wine growing region in the world, and it's a new wine growing region on the international stage. I think it's really in the last 20 years that you've actually started seeing anything that's of a qualitative side that you would want to say, okay, well, I'm going to spend $50, $60, $70, $80 on something, which is equivalent to what you would buy for a top champagne. And you're thinking, well, why? Well, ultimately, these are artisanal products, just like small production wines made by hand, as you can see by the picture here. Yeah. There's a lot of time and energy in farming, and there's a lot of time invested in, think about how long that wine was in that same bottle, right? For a very long time. 5 years.
Yeah, and I think it was about 1995 when I talked with Richard. What's his actual last name? Heidi Barrett's father. His last name is not Barrett. That's her married name, right? So Heidi Barrett's father is a scientist as well, and he was involved in creating clonal material that was mold resistant. And he was talking about his efforts were geared towards giving England a Pinot Noir clone that could grow without mildew. And So I believe he became a pretty wealthy guy because of that project and his success in that project. And that's something I wanted to talk to the Master Som about today, but neglected to do so. So
oh my God, the good thing about it is there's plenty of good insight. So on my team, we've had on with you Josh Orr, who's on the team. He could definitely give you some insight. But you see this great picture of the artisanal nature of farming, ultimately in cool climate farming, because also the difference in terms of yield in England versus in Champagne is significant in terms of how many vines per hectare are planted.
Yeah.
So Champagne has the highest density, or one of the highest densities of any plantings of vine per hectare of any viticultural region on the planet.
But they also have limits as to how much fruit per hectare they can get, because they really want each plant to be working on a minimum number of.
There's a lot of give and takes on this,
right.
But this is north of Champagne in terms of where it exists on the map, so to speak.
Sure. And this produce is like borderline perfection. Just look at
exactly. There's a lot of like meticulous. The meticulous nature of farming at this level is pretty significant, in my opinion. There he is, Charlie. He's the winemaker.
Cool, Charlie Holland, English Wine Producer of the Year. And the team here, I was checking out some photos of these guys working harvest this year. They all have very colorful rubber boots.
It can be dirty in the vineyard, but meticulously clean inside, as you can see.
Only a small percentage of the wine that goes into Gusbourne is exposed to wood, especially in a wine like this. I think she said about 5 to 10%. Is that right, Chris?
They have an assortment. It really depends on vintage and choices that are made. I think that an assortment of, that we always talk about, you talk about blending in non-vintage sparkling wine. You'll taste the cava later on tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you're going to talk a little bit about cava later on tonight. I know there was a Tattinger comment about Champagne versus, let's say Gusbourne, but ultimately everybody's looking for an assortment of layers and layers of complexity. Sometimes they're going to do a little extended lees here. They're going to do different layers of ways to make the wine, give it more complexity before it goes into bottle. And then once it's in bottle, a whole nother thing happens, right?
Yeah, the ageability of these high-end sparkling wines like Champagne, like this wine here, especially vintage dated wines, is amazing. And they only benefit from more time in your cellar.
Or large format. I think that the best way to buy sparkling wine is in Magnum or bigger. I know that sounds horrible, but it sounds very elitist of me, but it's true. Larger format sparkling wines age twice as well. And they taste so much better.
Taste better too. The weight of wine, and it is something I say almost any time I teach a class on sparkling wine, is that if you really want to give yourself a special treat, you don't have to spend a lot of money on the big bottle either. It doesn't have to be like a Tete
Sometimes you do.
A Tete Cuvée. It doesn't have to be Tete Cuvée, but you could have a regular bottle of Tattinger or a regular bottle of Veuve or a regular bottle, but in a big bottle, it's even so much more rewarding. And just think about a bottle like this. There's 4 glasses, so a mag is 8 glasses, and that's the perfect amount for 2 people at a lunch on a Friday where you don't have to leave in a hurry and you can just sit
the Magnum for 2 people. I like how you think.
I'm telling you, it's a success story.
Really,
I
know. To tell you the truth, my Magnums of Gusbourne, and they are available for Mr. Ian, of course. We get like 5 or 6 Magnums a year, or whenever they release them. It's not very much. but they released them with bottle even more. So I have, I think 2010 and 2011 in Magnum.
Awesome.
Anyway, sorry.
Well,
I couldn't help.
what I want to do now, Chris, with you is let's talk, and everybody please participate here. And I want to thank Michelle for coming in and saving me. Richard Peterson, Heidi Barrett Peterson, bingo. That he's a great dude, and Heidi's father, and he was a great winemaker. He still makes wine, and he's written books about wine, and he's the one who came in with some really amazing advancements in creating grape varieties that won't suffer from mildew in England. And I think he was rewarded sizably for that. So now I'm going to taste the Gusbourne with Chris. And really what I want to kind of do is talk about how what it tastes like. And I would love to get some feedback from you guys and hear what you think about how it feels. And maybe you compare it to Champagne or compare it to Prosecco, compare it to Cava. But I think it's got a very English presentation. Every time I taste it, I appreciate it as much as Champagne, but it is distinctively different. How? And I want you guys all to participate and give me some words that you would use to describe that, and what would you point out as being a benefit or a negative, or and we can all be honest here, what we like and dislike about this wine. When I start off with the wine, I look at it, I smell it, and to Chris's point, the bigger bowl allows you to smell a little bit better. The little teeny glass focuses that smell a little tight, but a bigger glass. I do swirl my sparkling wine. I know some people say, hey, you don't have to swirl sparkling wine, but still, I swirl everything. I swirl water, coffee. But I get a little kiss of autolysis, but I really smell that kind of that stony minerality right there behind the wine. And I don't get a lot of wood in the nose at all, but maybe a faint hint of it. Rachel says, seems a little earthy, seems a little English. She smells Game of Thrones.
I'm going to interject here real quick. Smells English. My mother is English. Okay. She smells like my mom, if that was such a thing. But English sparkling wine smells. I don't necessarily know that it's identifiable because it's English. I think it could be identifiable because it's Gusbourne. Technically, I don't necessarily know there's one criteria. I think when I smell this wine, I smell what's in the glass. So rather than what I believe it to be. So I think believing it to be is English, but what's in the glass? I think what I really want to know is, what fruits do you smell? So let's just not try to guess. Let's ask the question, what citrus fruits do you smell? So you start with what citrus fruits? Do you smell lemon? And if you smell lemon, is it zest? Is it, what is the lemon to you? Is it Meyer lemon? Is it lemon zest?
I get a little lemon zest, I think.
Okay. And so let's talk a little bit about the fruit component here. Is it, pear or apple or something like that? Is it, so if you're going to taste the wine, kind of dive in a little bit to the specificity. And then if you taste the wine from another region, maybe it has different kinds of fruits.
Julie says,
here, I think you get more orchard fruit sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that apple, and I want to think about, apple, but I smell just a little bit of a bruised apple or maybe slightly baked apple. And I think that's a little bit of the wood getting together with the varietal Chardonnay.
I love bruised apple as a characteristic in wine. There's a few I'm not going to get geeky on bruised apple. Chamomile would be another thing, but I don't necessarily get that in this wine per se. I really love the lift, the floral lift, rather than getting specific. I love the floral lift of this wine. I love the texture of this wine, which I think is a factor of its extended time on lees. And I love the length on the finish. It really stays with me. And once it's gone, the acid in this wine, you get it all on the side of the tongue, and it just kind of it gets you ready for the next glass. And I love it.
Getting some apple. Michelle says Meyer lemon, slightly underripe.
Hey, Ian.
I like that.
David, nice hat.
Yeah, have to wear it. You know what I get? It reminds me, because all our family is English and Welsh, and I remember my grandmother used to have a basket of apples I like cold fruit, but it reminds me of a warm yellow apple.
Oh, that's cool.
There, like a warm yellow apple and then lemon. But it reminds me of the fruit basket she had. It's really good. Lots of lift too.
So I'm making, on that note, I picked up some striped bass, and I just, I kind of pre-seasoned it with a little Maldon salt and some Kampot pepper and a little bit of lemon zest and a little olive oil. I'm just letting it sit there for a little bit, and I'll pan-sear it and in a little wok at a high heat. And then I'll serve it with some English peas, sugar snap peas. And a little bit of, something super simple, but super delicious.
Chris, you're going to hate what I'm going to say.
Wait, should I go get some more bubbles?
Yeah, maybe take a break for a minute. But when I was a kid, I had 15 jobs at all points of my life. My family were military family, and if my mom had a job, I was going to go to work with her. Or I would go try to pick up a job. Maybe I'd help my mom at work, probably not really helping. But one of the many jobs I had, I worked as a janitor, okay? I was 15 and a half, and I got hired to help in this law firm. And they had all this amazing wood furniture. And I had to apply Old English wood polish that smelled a little lemony, and it had this kind of nice perfume. And you're gonna hate the fact that I smell that in the nose of this wine, but has anybody ever used Old English wood polish? Because I get just right off the top of that, I was like, what am I smelling there? It's so familiar. And that's what all of our lives do. We all have these experiences in life where we've been somewhere, done something, cooked something, ate something, drank something, and we live with these nuances in our life. Now, if you never polished furniture with that stuff, you'd probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But it's definitely a really pretty, lemony, fragrant, oily lemon smell, and that I get a little hint of that in the nose of this wine. I'm sticking.
I just had to go fill my glass up. I apologize.
Sure, you wipe the tears off your face too at the same time.
I didn't catch all of it. I apologize. So he was disparaging me while I was away. That's fine.
I'm glad you missed it. Because Chris is a classic dude. He's studied for the Master Somm for years. I'd show up at the restaurant to taste with him. He'd want me to break down the wine, and I'd come in with my kind of crazy wraparound experiential stuff, and he's like, no, stick to the fundamentals and come at it straight ahead. So I just did one of those wraparounds that you would have hated, so that's why I had to preface that.
No worries. He still managed to sell me lots of wine, so in a good way, because the wine was good.
Terry, what are you guys smelling out there? You guys got
where does this fit in the pantheon? And I think that this I'm obviously quite biased because I've been to the property. I represent the wines in the U.S. and so forth. But at the end of the day, I come from a position of passion and excitement. And I remember when we just before we signed, I had said, I want to go and visit the region. And the owner of the company, Bartholomew Broadbent, he put together this fantastic tasting at our office in Richmond, and it was so amazing. I was like, these are all delicious, and he selected this wine to represent in the U.S. And when we signed with them to represent them in the U.S., I decided I was going on vacation, and I ended up going on my own to visit on my own dime because I wanted to go visit the property before the facility had even been finished, because I was so excited to finally be able to get a chance to see what they were really doing in England, but of course at the top of the game, which is what Gusbourne was then and continues to be. So yeah, wow. There's no doubt that at the end of the day, this has been a brand, so to speak, a winery in the US that hit about 85 or more %, probably more than that, of the wines sold in the US over the last 4 or 5 years have been to the on-premise world. So this is actually a relatively new occurrence to see it in the on-premise, or I mean off-premise side. So all this was, let's say I had this at Vespertine, for those of you who are here in LA. This was nice. A store for them, the Blanc de Blanc and the Rosé as well. People like Phil Dunn at Spago who've represented Gusbourne on the list. I've had a lot of amazing representation. Odium downtown.
Hey, Chris, hold that thought for 1 second, because Terry, I asked her earlier what she and her team were smelling, and she's got a whole group there. So I wanted to get some Terry love. Terry, Kamali, can you guys talk? You guys cool to come on?
All three of us on a team, Ian.
Yeah, Team Kamali. What do you guys think?
So a couple of us smelled apple, Asian pear, and Meyer lemon zest.
Those are right on.
Yeah.
Right on. That's cool. I like some of the Omar Lima said janitorial engineer. That was a nice way of saying I was a janitor. But I was 15. I was happy to get paid, so whatever I could do, and that was a great job. Like wax on, wax off. I learned some shit back then. You know, I got hired by a hotel to work in food and beverage, and the food and beverage director, a famous one named Ollie Kasiki, it was the Peninsula Beverly Hills, and he said, "Ian, you want to, as a young man, to get into the management world, I've got a job for you." And he wanted to hire me in to be the director of housekeeping, and it was kind of like a liaison between housekeeping and the restaurant, being taking care of the plates, the silver, the china, the glassware, all that stuff. I learned more about plates and glassware than any 18-year-old male, 19-year-old male would ever know. That stuff is just kind of fun in life to have that information. But Ali Kasiki offered me that job, and I didn't take it, and I regret that, because he was a pretty awesome general manager. I don't know if you ever heard the stories of him, but he ran the Peninsula Beverly Hills for a long time, and then went to the Montage. All right, so who else do we have out there that's got some more feedback? I see a lot of folks. Ryan, what do you got?
I get English restraint is what I get. You know, there's just something about it. It's not over the top. It's elegant, but it's very understated, kind of maybe like some people who created this wine.
Very nice. I like it. And you can compare that to some music, some cars, some English luxury.
I do share one thing though. I don't know if you can see this bottle.
Okay. No.
My wife is English.
Okay, is that an English white wine?
My mom lives in Wales. This is from a little town called Abergavenny, and this is from Sugarloaf Vineyards. So they are making wine further north.
Look at that.
So anyway.
I like the reference earlier to Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I like that too.
Omar, how you doing, buddy? Talking about Montage.
No, doing good, doing good. And Chris, I wanted to ask a question. I have tasted Gusbourne before. Amazing. Um, to me, when I tasted the rosé as well, I think this is the future of where sparkling wine is going because of climate change, which is real. I think England has some of the best terroir as well. And if they keep on what they're doing, the price point right now is a little tough. But I think that's where sparkling wine is going in the future as far as top tier. You're still going to have the top amazing champagne houses and so on. But with that happening and moving, I think England, especially with Gusbourne, shocked me the first time I had the Blanc du Blanc, the Rosé I had last year for my birthday, thanks to Samantha, Chris. So
I thought her samples budget was quite high. Yeah.
Just so everybody knows, Omar works and buys wine for a number of great places throughout LA, and so the three of us.
Now we're owned by
the English
London,
hotel,
English company, Mayborn.
Mayborn Hotel.
We got to do business, Chris.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, twist my arm. No, I don't. Oh no, please.
Are you guys making half bottles, Chris? I think that's in-room amenity.
Yeah. Jeez.
Oh, I like it.
Omar has been Omar is definitely one of the really kind of new, young, up and coming sommeliers. It's somebody who you should pay attention to. For those of you who have Instagram handles, just do Omar Lima and it'll come up. And he's a very participatory in the industry and is definitely got some chops behind it. You know, he's got great questions all the time.
His passion is off the charts, man. Off the charts.
We love it. And I love the comments on here. People are talking a little bit about climate change. You know, at the end of the day, you know, you see the cycle. You know, and sadly this year and here in California, we see the cycle all too well. Aside from everything else we got to deal with this year, we had to deal with that, and even even us in LA, had to deal with that. So it's just dreadful to think about it. But also, it's also a reflection of what happened this year. If you get a chance to experience it.
I want to go a little deeper on the wine too, as there was one thing I didn't get to say earlier, and that English comment that Ryan made. I think it is restrained in a way where it's not just trying to emulate what champagne tastes like. It's definitely sparkling in its own area and region. And if I had to fight for this wine as to what I love about it, one of my main things that I love about this wine is that this is going to sound a little redundant, but it's a little bit more wine-like, whereas some sparkling wines are so persistent with so much bubble and so much effervescence. The attack is so extreme. This has got this vinous softness and plushness, and then the bubble comes in behind that. And I really think that that's something I really enjoy about this wine. It's got a little bit more of a wine-like presence to it, rather than just pure intensity of the bubble and the persistence. Does anybody want to argue with me on that or say I'm crazy?
Well, you got to unmute them if you want to hear them. I think.
Oh, I don't think I do. Is it anybody?
I agree 100%.
Or you could just listen to our chat messages.
Yeah, the chat messages are great, Jenny. You are obviously a very good typer. How many words per minute can you type, Jenny?
She can type fast. She's going to type us something big. She's going to, it's good stuff. No, really, it's great that Ian made a really great point about the vinous nature of this wine. And so we dive into the descriptions of wine and what it really means. What does vinous mean? It's something that's beyond, you have aroma, you have something that has more development characteristics in this wine, and that's exactly what traditional method sparkling wine is. It's you smell that vinous characteristic in this wine. There's some age on this wine. There's some both autolysis age, I mean lees age, but also bottle age as well. And I think that when you taste the bubbles here, that's only one component of the wine. It's not the only component. So when you taste champagne or sparkling wine, especially traditional method sparkling wine, you need to not just focus on the bubbles, which I love the bubbles. You know, technically, I guess bubbles lower pH and increase acidity in wine just purely in the fact that there's CO2 trapped, right? But and that's why you always talk about high acid in bubbles. But ultimately, you know, you got to taste, smell. I can't read everything that everybody's writing. It's all. I'll let Ian translate. That nerdy Chris, I see that one from Omar.
Set them straight.
Did I go down the rabbit hole there? A little bit. It happens.
It's always a rabbit hole.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
Come on.
But there's also more of like I always used to go talk about wine and talk about specifics in wine, but also analyze it beyond just the specific of what your original intent was, which was, hey, let's have some fun. That's always going to be the most important intent. But then, is it bubbles that are your intent, or is it great wine with bubbles?
And that's a kind of a rhetorical question, but I will say that there was a really good question earlier about what is the difference between non-vintage and vintage. And in a nutshell, with a vintage wine, you can go for it and make the best wine that you can from that year and express what the year gave to you and not have to be too tied down to any one particular house style reference. Whereas in a non-vintage wine, you want to maintain this house style integrity. So every time someone opens a Gusbourne or a Veuve or a Moet or a Taittinger, it should taste similar. And that's like mind-blowingly difficult to do, by the way. And winemakers don't get enough credit in the sparkling wine industry when they're making thousands and millions of bottles that have a kind of a resemblance to each other year after year after year. Now they got a lot of tools to work with, but a brand like this, well, I don't know how much non-vintage you make versus vintage.
They only make vintage. So
there you go.
It's 100% estate only, so they control everything, and 100% vintage. So the style. So if you were gonna say, talking about style, so Ian's making great points about styles in non-vintage, but ultimately the comment here is about a reflection of that harvest. So the vintage means the harvest that the grapes were grown, right? So I think that answers the question earlier, right? That somebody's saying, what is vintage versus non-vintage? A non-vintage wine would be basically something that is blended across multiple vintages to create layers of flavor that are more they can duplicate over time. So like he said, Taittinger, Brut Française, or like Veuve Clicquot Yellow Label, they're consistent.
Plus, they can bring a wine to the marketplace with some speed and efficiency by using that model too. Whereas if they made a ton of 14, they got to wait until the year 2020 to release it. And so the non-vintage model lets them, respond to market demand. And it also allows you to make wine in a tough vintage and kind of hide it amongst the other vintages, or not use it and not disrupt your supply.
It's true. There's the argument back and forth. Gusbourne doesn't make enough wine to make a bunch of masses, vats of wine, that they're not going to do that. And they're focused on artisanal winemaking, and that's the focus. This is a artisanal product. I hate to use that term because sometimes it's overused, but in this case, this is hands. Every bottle, I literally probably was touched by Charlie. So the winemakers. So I mean, that's how like beyond. That's how detailed it is.
Right.
And they're involved in the farming side of things as well, you know. So they're involved from the beginning to the end, and it's a massive investment in that aspect. And also, you know, hopefully when if we get to some form of normalcy, that they have a fabulous visit space that's just amazing, called the Nest.
Well, we all hope to visit, and the pictures of the venue are spectacular.
Yeah.
In our gift bag, I'm going to send out everybody the video that I just can't seem to get up and running. Probably have to restart my computer to get it to work. But it was about a 5 to 10 minute interview with Master Som, who really knows an incredible amount about all the wines of the world, and then she relates it back to Gusbourne. And so that's a really fun interview, and you'll really enjoy her. She's quite endearing and authentic, and I love her little English accent. She's so charming, and the wine is really going to benefit from you knowing about it, because English sparkling is going, as Omar said, it is going to have a position. And I think it is, as Omar said earlier, at the luxury side, because quite honestly, England's not going to make a ton of wine. And like the island of New Zealand, which up until the last 2 years has maintained the highest price points in the world of, just because they don't make a lot of wine, so they have to sell it for a premium. And I think that England will come in at the high end of the market. The rest of the markets are going to probably rise towards them, and they'll be able to either decide if they're going to continue to go up or be a little bit more competitive as supply increases. But for the moment, they don't make enough wine for anywhere, one specific spot, but to be found and to put that effort out there. The price point comes in, somewhere in the neighborhood of around $70 average retail for this product, and we get a nice price for us tonight. For those that on the Zoom, I'm going to even make the price extra special, and I think you guys will enjoy the price I'm able to offer you. And I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. We have 3 weeks in a row, and my goal in this 3-week series is to talk about sparkling wine at different levels, different producers, different countries, different grape varieties, get to know some of the rules and the laws and some of the things that are maybe limiting production, or some of the challenges that some of the producers are facing. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and champagne production and champagne consumption is actually up. So that's something interesting to think about. And I think we're going to continue to see that kind of like, hey, I'm going to live for the moment, because God knows what's tomorrow. And so we're gonna make 5, and we'll probably spend 6 doing that. But that's probably good. That's probably good for the economy too. So keep it going.
Well, tell Susan she's going to enjoy her bubbles tomorrow, right, Susan? And Michelle, your question regarding another vintage and a vintage wine. In many markets, the wine law allows for that, just because it's a law. But I would have to tell you that 99% of the producers don't blend across vintages if they're going to declare a vintage, right, Ian? I think, and definitely not Gusbourne. It's 2014.
Well, I think I don't know that I was paying close enough attention to answer your question accurately, but there are vintages we don't make a vintage wine from, and then when the vintage is really good, we'll probably steal from that vintage and make as much vintage as we can practically afford to. But the whole concept of vintage wine is expensive. It is a big financial suck, because that wine goes through a vintage channel, which can only absorb so much quantity. So like right now, there's still 08s coming out. Imagine that. The 08 champagne market, one of the great vintages of all time, and some brands are just releasing their 08s. and that's 12 years of carrying that inventory. So certain vintages will get.
I love that.
Yeah, I know you do. But
I mean, I'll tell you, I bought all the 2010. Well, I think I bought the last two Gusbourne 2010 Magnums Blanc de Blanc because they're just. It's crazy how the value side of those are amazing, right?
All right. Well, send me some prices on bags so we can offer it to people. Or are you going to drink them all?
I'll share them with you, sir.
Chris, if I may ask, before you sell out of them, what's the first vintage of Gusbourne?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
First vintage.
Yeah, first vintage.
That's a great question. The first vintage we brought into the U.S. was 2010 vintage. I want to say, maybe it was 2011. My problem is that I was at the winery. Literally, while the wines were on the water, I went to the winery, and I went when they were still in construction for the main winery area. They were making wine. I mean, they had the winemaking facility, but not like the facility for the visitor center and so forth. So it was kind of like going. If you guys used to go up to Santa Barbara to the ghetto back in the day, that was kind of like, that was it. You know, there was a winemaking facility, that was the focal point, and there was a little taste that you just tasted through. So I tasted a lot of wines back to 2009. I want to say the first vintage was 2007, but I should have known that. I'm glad you put me to the test.
Well, the property was the property was purchased in 2004 and planted at that time. So they probably had third leaf.
Well, I know that 2009 we've had, and I'm 99% sure I've had 2009s. But I think 2007 might have been the first vintage release.
Right, first micro little production there.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not an old project for sure. We're talking about the evolving English wine market, and this is on the cutting edge. This is where it started, and there's a couple other brands. Christopher, who's in the competitive set?
It's just no one. Just
Come on, man. I know Steven Spurrier make a wine.
Has been good. There's a lot of great producers, and take a look at some of the producers that do make non-vintage, but don't assume that they're going to have that same, like, well, they're all the same and therefore there's distinct stylistic differences. We've done a tasting a couple years ago now, a year and a half ago now. We did a big tasting, 18 English sparkling wines at Pebble Beach Food and Wine, and Laura Rees, who he interviewed, Ian interviewed this morning. She did an amazing job, and there was a bunch of very loudmouth like me people on the panel with her, and she was letting them all speak. And then when she spoke, she just threw it all down and said exactly the way it was, and she just rocked it. It was awesome. And what it was that she kind of really expressed all the stylistic differences throughout all of England and Wales as well. And the sparkling wines are really delicious. I mean, Gusbourne's just better. And I'm not saying that because, yeah, I'm biased, but I've tasted them. There are very few that have the consistency in this wine. And I put my money where my mouth is, and I put my own money into tasting through. And truly, these are stupendous. And when you talk about guys like Omar,
you won't get a word in edgewise there, buddy. Go ahead.
Yeah, good luck.
I think Chris definitely ahead of the game. We have I remember tasting Musar with you, and he was in town. Thank you for that. But getting ahead of the game is what everybody needs to do now, and thinking about climate change and whatnot. Gusbourne has gotten ahead. There's actual houses of champagne that are actually looking at land, if not purchased already, in England to get ahead of that when that whole transition happens. So I think everybody that is tasting Gusbourne right now needs to know that they're tasting special juice. It is, don't compare it to champagne, even though there are some that Gusbourne Rosé, if you ever get a chance to taste it, is beautiful and well made. But I think everybody needs to kind of get ahead of the game and see where things are going, and things are being elevated throughout. And England is one of those who kind of like took champagne and was like, hey, climate, we have it. It's here. Let's do it right. Do it traditional. Not do it better, but do it justice. But think about that too. Like, there's houses of champagne that are purchasing land in England. So that's all I have to say.
Well, and you know why? There's a couple of other reasons and other reasons to do that. Diversification. So you don't have all your eggs in one basket. Much like Napa Valley producers are buying land in Walla Walla, and Burgundy producers are buying land in Oregon. So the sparkling wine producers, you know, things happen. You know, maybe there's a moment in the future where England and France aren't even talking anymore. So, you know, they have, the champagne houses can have ownership in different areas. They'll have a California sparkling, they'll have an Aussie sparkling, they'll have a French sparkling, maybe a little English sparkling. So they diversify that way. Economically, currencies change, valuations as well. And there's always those tariffs, and there's always the things like Brexit that are going to hit the market.
It's a great point. And at the end of the day, when you know, it's an artisanal product, but they're not trying to do it just to have fun. They're also trying to do it because there's some business opportunities.
Big business, man.
Tattinger bought a bunch of land, I think, right?
Giant investment, yeah.
And I know that you know, obviously they make fabulous sparkling wine up in Northern California. You know, Roederer made fabulous sparkling wine up in Anderson Valley. I mean, you can tell everybody's come around. You know, Moet down in Brazil, and you know, and crazy stuff. But I'm really a massive fan of the terroir here, and really what these guys are doing. But don't be afraid of English sparkling wine, for sure. It's fun.
Yeah, and I think the future is bright. Everyone's coming in with really good efforts. I sent everybody an article of some other producers to look for, but guess who's number one on that list? Gusbourne. So,
well, there are very few who are focused on such a on-premise focus. They really focused on releasing the wines when they're ready to drink, and they'll continue to evolve, and they're very food friendly. And that's why you always see them with some age, and that's the beauty of it. I prefer that. It's a luxury, so to speak. Absolutely.
Well, this sparkling wine series, guys, is something we will do a couple of times, and each time featuring different brands and different places. And yes, someone asked about Franciacorta. That'll be in a future time. I couldn't squeeze all the sparkling wines in the world into 3 weeks, but we want to do it right. We want to have fun. We want to be able to spend a good quality time discussing the product. And I'm sorry that I couldn't get our master som on the Zoom, but you'll be able to watch that video eventually here. I just got to get it to you. So I will do that tonight. All the people that are on the Zoom also get a little gift bag from us after the Zoom with special pricing. So join the Zoom and come and do it. The Zooms are free, by the way. You still get the discounted price. But there's also some benefits to joining the series, and everybody that was on the Zoom tonight got a dozen little champagne glasses from Riedel. I hope you guys enjoy them. I think they're very cute, and like a little Pilsner glass, and you'll now have glasses for your friends for the holidays.
Ian, you rock, man, as always. Thank you so much for letting me come in and participate and take over the conversation at times, as he so graciously allows.
Cheers to you, buddy. I love having the...
Cheers to you. My glass is sadly empty right now, which will be filled, and I need to make some dinner.
Good. Me too. Well, I want to thank you guys all. Have a great night. I'm so juiced about the Dodgers still, so I'm going to go have a celebratory dinner myself. And I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you, Rachel, for all your comments. Thank you, Jenny, for your amazing fingers. And David K, thanks, bro. Great to have you there. Ryan, thank you so much. Julie, love to see you. Thank you so much. Pia, you're awesome. Michelle, thank you so much. I'm glad you got everything set up there in San Diego. Where's the rest of our San Diego group? I haven't seen him in a couple of weeks. Hi, Rachel, thank you.
Lauren was in Chicago for a while, and he's not a fan of bubbles, so.
One of those guys, huh? Red meat, potatoes kind of guy. Yeah. I get it. Well, great to have you. Sue Green, always great to have you. Terry, thank you and your friends there. Thanks for bringing the energy. Appreciate it. Omar, always a joy. Stephanie Smith, so awesome to have you in their house. Thank you so much. Thanks for all your support, Stephanie. Facebook and otherwise. Love you. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good night. Be well.